Am I to take it that you're a changed man?
Is that so very incredible? After all, I do have a great deal of which to repent.
You're telling us.
In that case, perhaps you would like to tell me the whereabouts of your TARDIS.
So that you could use it in order to escape from this planet, Doctor?
No, so that I can make absolutely certain that you can't.
No, I'm sorry. That is too much to ask.
Ask a silly question. Come on, Joe. I think we better be going. Is there anything that I can do for you at all?
There is one thing. Please come in now and then to have a chat. Oh, Trenchard's a very nice man, but his conversation is somewhat limited.
Goodbye.
Goodbye, Miss Grant. And goodbye, Doctor. I sincerely hope we meet again very soon. Goodbye.
Hello and welcome to Who Watches Who, a Doctor Who podcast with me, Matthew, and as always...
Hello, I'm Scott.
Hello, Scott. As always, I'm joined by... I didn't do it this week. And as always, just feels like a nicer place to end it off. But this week we are covering the Sea Devils, episodes 1 and 2, because it is, the 50th anniversary of the Sea Devils appearing, and also,
Yep.
They're coming back for Jodie's next special, so we figured, why not do it now? Why not cover their original appearance?
When this episode comes out, tomorrow will be the 50th anniversary of the second episode, so we're nice and prepared here.
Yeah, and we're recording it about 2 weeks in advance, so we're extra prepared. But this episode first aired on Saturday, February 26th, 1972. That would be episode 1 of this 6-part special. It ran all the way into April, but I only have the 26th of February because, honestly, this segment goes on long enough. I don't want to keep extending it out. But that was, at the time of recording, 49 years, 11 months, and 19 days ago. The 50th anniversary would have just been this past Sunday when you're listening to it, I think. I think that's what it would be.
The 26th, that would be a Saturday.
Okay, this past Saturday. Ha ha ha. Yes, because of course the episode aired on a Saturday, didn't it? And 50 years ago, moves up mathematics. Anyway, do you have any idea, any whisper in your mind as to who the US president is in 1970, whatever year I said, 2?
Oh my god, I know I got it right in the Demons, but now I forgot. Is it still Richard Nixon?
It's still Richard Nixon. Indeed. Famous, of course, for being a Futurama character come to life. And the UK Prime Minister, I feel like we've probably talked about him before as well, but I didn't remember a single fact about him, so I got a little bit of stuff. Have you ever heard of the Prime Minister, or could you guess who it is? I've given you a clue as to saying it's a guy, so it's some white dude you've never heard of.
It's always some white dude, isn't it? Apart from when it's not.
Apart from when it's not, yeah. Apart from those 2 times.
You probably told me when we did the Demons last year, but it's out of my mind now.
The UK Prime Minister at this time was Edward Heath, a Tory, so, thumbs down. But he seemed like a really boring man, and I kind of appreciate that because he was the Prime Minister that during his time oversaw the decimalization of the British coinage, which is why we don't have sixpences anymore, and instead we just have pennies, and it's now like £5 and 6p rather than £5 and 2 shillings and a copper. It made our money way more accurate, I guess, would be a way of doing it. Easier to use. And in 1972, he led the reformation of local government in the United Kingdom, which significantly reduced the number of local authorities and created several new metropolitan counties, many of which remain to this day. See, I really want politicians to be that boring again. You know, that's what I want.
I know.
It's
Instead, politicians keep on partying every day. Just get over it, dudes.
Yeah. See, I just want boring bureaucrat politicians who you look at and you hear them talk and you go, God, I don't want your job.
Or you just fall asleep to them.
Yeah, exactly. The number one song in the US on this day is a very 1970s song. You're not going to be able to guess it unless you think you would be able to. How up are you on 1970s pop? Not a lot? Okay. It is Nilsson's Without You. And to define the song, every 1970s music song, every early 1970s song ever made is Nilsson with 2 S's, Without You.
I'm giving it a listen now. Okay, I've heard of this song. Okay. This is a very sad song.
Every 1970s.
Very break-up-y.
Yeah. Whereas over in the UK... the number one song was from a band called Chicory Tip, even more British. And it was called Son of My Father. It was a song I had heard before. It's significantly more funky than the US song. And also everyone's hair is atrocious. So that's a good win.
Give me a second. Need to look this up. Yeah, that's pretty funky.
Yeah, I was quite a fan of it. And then it gets kind of repetitive throughout most of the song. It goes on too long, I think, but it's everyone's hair. I was really appreciating.
It's only 3 minutes and 5 seconds, so it's
Yeah, I
really
know.
saying something when it feels like it's gone on for too long.
Yeah. But there was really only one interesting thing that happened on this day, and that is Slag Heap Dam collapsed above Buffalo Creek in West Virginia and killed 125 people. And that got me to thinking, Scott. That sounds weird, but every time I do this segment, it's always so-and-so died, or there was a terrorist attack here, or nothing happened there. So I was like, okay, how could we improve the events that happened? So I took a look back through history, and Scott, I'll have you know that on February 26th, 1616, the Roman Inquisition delivered an injunction to Galileo demanding that he abandon his belief of heliocentrism. So that was cool. And in 1797, the Bank of England issued the first £1 note. And,
nice.
And it keeps going. In 1815, Napoleon Bonaparte and his supporters leave Elba to start a 100-day reconquest of France. Napoleon Bonaparte, who ever heard of him? Also in 1885, a Berlin Conference gives Congo to Belgium and Nigeria to Great Britain. They're just handing out countries. And then in 1935, radar, which stands for radio detection and ranging, was first demonstrated by Robert Watson Watt. A bunch of cool stuff happening in February 26th. And then, of course...
Dr. Watson Watt.
Yeah, and then of course...
Is that his name?
Yeah, literally, his name is Robert Watson Watt. Bob Watson Watt, yeah. And then flash forward from 1935 to 1972, and what do you get but the Sea Devils? Just a short, let's see, 6, 7, 8, 9, 300 years removed from the Roman Inquisition delivering an injunction to Galileo.
I don't know anything about history. I don't know what any of that means, but sure.
And the top film in the US was Dirty Harry.
Right, okay. Well, that was a history lesson today brought to you by Matthew.
I thought some of the stuff was interesting.
But you know what else happened in history at some point? The writer of this episode, Malcolm Hulk, was born in 1924, and before World War II, he attempted to register as a conscious objector during World War II, but his application was denied, and he eventually joined the Royal Navy, which is very relevant to this episode. After the war, Hulk, who was firmly on the left, would join the Communist Party of Great Britain and was an on and off
talk about
member
firmly on the left. I don't think you can get much firmer.
And he was an on and off member for over 20 years. So yeah, he was with the party for a while. In the early 50s, Mac wrote a book that earned him around £18, which obviously isn't very good.
Well, that could buy. In what year was that?
In the early 50s. So
yeah,
it's
but that's like you could buy a house.
And his friend Eric Pace wrote a play that failed, and the two men looked at each other and says, "We're not getting anywhere in the world. Let's do this shit properly." And the two went into making a play for television. It was picked up by the BBC. They then went over to ITV in the late 50s and wrote 4 episodes of Armchair Theatre, which was created by Sidney Newman. Now, this name Sidney Newman is important because he created a little show called Doctor Who.
Never heard of it.
Have you ever heard of this,
No.
Doctor? Yeah, I know.
Don't think it's going to pick up.
It's apparently about this old man and his granddaughter. They travel through time and space.
Sounds like the worst
Never
show
heard
I've
of it.
ever heard of in my life.
So Sidney Newman loved their script for Armchair Theatres and asked them to make a children's show called Pathfinders in Space, which aired in 1960. The following year, Newman created The Avengers, not the Marvel Avengers, of course, but the spy British series.
He created the reason why the Marvel Avengers had to be called Avengers Assemble over here.
Yeah. But yeah, he created The Avengers, and Hulk wrote 9 scripts between 1962 and 1969, and he wrote 4 of these episodes with another Doctor Who famous name called Terrance Dicks. Terrance Dicks, of course, is the man who created the name Time Lord, Gallifrey, created the concept of a multi-Doctor story, and all these fun stuff that we all love and know today. So Newman moved to the BBC in 1962 and quickly asked Hulk to write stories on Doctor Who. So Hulk was there from like day one of Doctor Who, and he wrote several unused ideas. And today in this segment called Buy or Sell,
Oh yeah,
these unused ideas. So in season 1, he wrote a story called The Hidden Planet. It was about a planet which is the same size as Earth, but on the other side of the sun, and therefore we have never seen it. The Doctor goes to the planet, and for obvious reasons, the TARDIS crew think they are on Earth, but they find things are different. The planet is covered in 4-leaf clovers, birds fly backwards, and women are the dominant race, while men struggle for their own rights. Buy or sell?
Buy. I think it's a fun idea. It brings in a lot of this is an episode that's getting retconned, because that's a pretty major revelation that there's a second Earth behind the sun that nobody talks about, especially if you jump into more modern eras of Doctor Who where we have like satellites.
Yeah.
But I think it's a fun idea. I'll give him that. And I'd probably rework it and, just make it like a mirror universe or something boring like that. Because I think that's easier to deal with canon-wise. But I think it's a funky town. It's a funky town. I rate it funky town. That's my official rating.
Gotta move to a place that's right for you? Is that how the lyric goes? Funky Town?
I don't know.
It's from Shrek 2.
Yeah.
Have you heard that song?
I've heard of the song. I just couldn't tell you a single lyric from it.
But yeah, I would buy the story as well. It'd be a very political story, I guess, because of a woman being the dominant species. Well, species?
Yeah, that's yeah, there are different species. You're right. Yes, that's true. If the women were dominant, though, the amount of murder on that planet, because obviously empowered females make unempowered white males want to commit mass murder, according to that one MP.
Oh yes.
Insert clip here so people don't think I'm insane.
Everywhere, not at least within the cultural sphere, there seems to be a call from a tiny yet very vocal minority that every male character or good role model must have a female replacement. One only needs to look at the discussion surrounding who will play the next James Bond. And it's not just James Bond. In recent years, we have seen Doctor Who, Ghostbusters, Luke Skywalker, The Equalizer, all replaced by women. And men are left with the Craze and Tommy Shelby. Is there any wonder we are seeing so many young men committing crime?
What an utter dick that guy is.
Yeah. Smart man. Very...
Yeah, totally. Yeah. But this story was the 4th scheduled for the season 1, which had been quite early in the show. It was eventually moved to the 5th story. Mac was when Malcolm Hulk. His nickname is Mac, so I'm just gonna call him Mac sometimes, in case you get confused. So Mac was then told he needed a major rewrite. A pay dispute wound up happening, and once it was resolved, Susan left the show, which means he had to go back for more rewrites. And the third submission was rejected because Ian and Barbara left in a similar way, which would have resulted in another rewrite. And he was like, "You know what? Fuck this. I'm not writing this anymore."
Fair. That's fair enough.
What a disaster, Phil. Just getting fucked around every corner.
Yeah. It's one of those things, it was never meant to happen, was it? It was never meant to happen.
So Big Finish do these things where they sometimes bring in old scripts that weren't used. And I would love to hear this script in a Big Finish version, but I presume it's lost or something. I don't know.
Yeah, or it's terrible. Maybe it is really bad. No idea.
Yeah, totally. So the second story that was unused is called Britain 408 AD. And the story involved the departure of the Romans from Britain around the start of the 5th century in the midst of the clashes against the Celts and the Saxons, culminating with the time travellers fleeing from the indigenous savages and back to the safety of the TARDIS.
See, I was on board until indigenous savage, and that makes me feel like it's not going to be handled very well. Although, to be fair, the episodes with the Mayans and stuff in season 1, besides the fact I'm pretty sure they're all white people, it's handled all right. With the Mayans,
Which episode is this again?
In season 1, but I think it's one of the first stories. Doctor Who. I'm pretty sure it's Mayans. I'll pull it up on BritBox. Let's find out. AZTECS, not the Mayans,
right.
The AZTECS. There we go. Oh my god, I felt like I was going insane there. I was looking at it, it's like, what? I could have sworn there was it's a really long story that goes on for ages. No, it was the AZTECS. Yes.
It didn't go on for ages. It was a 4-parter. It was a good, solid 4-parter.
Was it, or was it mediocre?
You think it was mediocre?
Yeah. I don't remember. I remember it being okay. I watched it.
You watched it, okay.
But yeah, they handled the AZTECS all right in that, for it being at the time, and also all the actors being white.
Yeah.
So, maybe they'd handle it okay, but the phrasing makes me just be like, we'll pass. Also, I'm not the biggest fan of historical Doctor Who as much as I am futuristic sci-fi concept Doctor Who.
Yeah, neither am I. I'm not a big fan of historicals myself, which is why I would sell this. So this story got rejected because story editor David Whittaker told Mac to revise the story because it was too complicated, and the ending was too similar to the ending of the Unearthly Child. If you remember, at the end of that episode, they have to flee away from the cavemen back into their TARDIS. Yeah. It eventually got replaced by the AZTECS, as you just talked about there. You said it was very boring. And by the end of season 1, they decided there were too many historicals, so they just put it on the back bench. And Hulk submitted a new version of his script for season 2 to the new script editor, Dennis Spooner. But it was then rejected again because he had done the Romans himself in the episode called The Romans.
Yeah, which that one goes on too long. Jesus Christ.
I don't remember the Romans too much.
It was one of the most it's one of the most recent stories, because I think it's maybe the story right before the Web Planet, or it's the story a couple stories before the Web Planet, but I watched it very recently and it is long. Very long. And the Doctor does nothing the whole time. He just kind of lounges about as a Roman royalty for a bit.
Yeah, that sounds very familiar.
Yeah.
You'll notice the first Doctor doesn't do much apart from sit around for a lot of his stories.
He's also got so many historical episodes that I find them really hard to get, or they're terrible, like the Web Planet, which I think I've been watching for about 3 months.
Yeah, I noticed you have one episode left.
I know.
You're just at such a roadblock right now.
It's so bad.
Well, I can't wait to do a podcast episode on that one.
Oh yeah,
It's gonna be a lot of fun.
it'd be fun to talk about because it's mental, but it's boring and bad to watch for 20 minutes, and it's like a 6-part story. Oh my god, yeah. Anyway.
So when Malcolm Hulke wrote another episode called The People Who Couldn't Remember with David Ellis, but the story was rejected in 1966 and not much is known about it. Mac and David Ellis wrote another script soon after called The Big Score, and this is back into the bet, buy and sell segment. It was about aliens who have escaped a terrible holocaust on their home planet. They have lost their individuality and decide to adopt human form. The setting is the department store where the aliens use dummies as their temporary hosts before finding more suitable bodies. Yeah?
Yeah.
Bye.
I think it sounds like a fun episode. Yeah. I think the most interesting concept he's come up with is the mirror Earth. With birds flying backwards and stuff like that. But that one's fine. It's like you'd stick that in the middle of a season. I think that's what I would do with it.
Yeah, and this episode was rejected, obviously, but it was reused. The concept was reused in the Faceless Ones in 1967, which is a Patrick Troughton episode. And the idea of the mannequins was to be used again in Spearhead from Space, which is the whole idea of the Autons. So it essentially came up with the idea of the Autons, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
Kind of cool just to reuse ideas here and there. 2 years later, he wrote The War Games with Terrence Dicks, which is the final episode, 10-part epic saga of Patrick Troughton's last episode, and it's excellent. I can't wait to get to that. Although it'll be like 2 months worth of material.
Covering it. Yeah, yeah.
But they basically wrote like 2 episodes a day because it was a very rushed last-minute production, which is kind of sad, but it comes out really well, I thought. I haven't seen it in a while, but it's a great episode. And also in the late 60s, now I would totally buy this. In the late 60s, he wrote a pilot for a radio series of Doctor Who to star Peter Cushing as Doctor Who. I would buy it.
See, I would buy it because I like Peter Cushing, or Peter Cushing. Peter Cushing. That's a hard name to say for me, apparently. But I haven't got any experience with Peter Cushing actually portraying the Doctor. I know he does it in the Doctor Who and the Daleks movies, but I haven't actually seen those movies yet. So I can't say whether or not I would firm buy it because I don't know if I enjoy his portrayal as the Doctor quite yet. But I'd stick it on the. I'll put a bid in, but.
Well, we'll be getting into the Doctor in the Daleks movie soon, so I might ask you that question again. So it's 1970, and obviously the new Doctor, who is John Pertwee, my favourite Doctor, and Terrence Dicks, who he had worked with in The Avengers for a couple of episodes, is the new script editor, and he's looking for a new script. And Barry Letts is a producer here, and they ask Mac to write The Silurians, about reptile men who have slept for millions of years, and when they wake they decide to claim back their home planet. The Doctor has to be the peacekeeper between humans and Silurians, which is a fantastic episode. The first half of it is kind of slowly paced, and then the second half of the series, the story is very quick and kind of goes through a lot of ideas very quickly. Feels like with 7 episodes.
They could have spread those ideas across all of them rather than.
It's poorly paced, but it kind of adds a lot of dimensions into the Silurians. Like, there's one Silurian who wants to destroy all mankind. There's one who's like, I don't know about mankind. Do I want to destroy them? Do I want to befriend them and all that? Or is one of them, the leader, is just like, yeah, I accept peace between Silurians and humans. We can live on this planet together peacefully. One of the bad Silurians kind of kills the Silurian and it just turns into a war, and it's very great. It's a biological war, and it's a very fun episode. And obviously very political. Doctor Who is never political, except for almost all the time.
Don't know what you're talking about. It's about aliens, Scott.
So Malcolm Hulke has a great quote about politics in Doctor Who. He once said, "It's a very political show. Remember what politics refers to. It refers to a relationship between groups of people. It doesn't necessarily mean left or right, so all Doctor Who are political. Even though the other group of people are reptiles, they're still a group of people, which is like the best way of putting it.
Yeah, except, right, they're reptiles, so where's the connection? I don't see it.
Doctor Who was never political. The script contains well-thought-out characters who are neither hero or villain. Not even the Doctor was presented as fully hero, and the theme of the story is very deeply about xenophobia. He was then assigned to Ambassadors of Death as one of the 4 writers because it went through like a production hell. He then wrote Colony in Space before writing The Sea Devils. After The Sea Devils, he wrote for another 2 stories for the Pertwee era, and soon left the show in 1974. He then wrote 7 novelizations before his death at the age of 54 in 1979.
Oh, yikes, he died young.
Yeah. Yeah, very, very young, which is very sad. And I would have liked to see more of stories from him, because he's a very good writer, I thought.
Yeah, well, these first 2 episodes...
We'll get into it. But so the idea of the Sea Devils was the result of Barry Letts and Terence Dicks wanting to revisit old ideas in their 3rd season without resorting to repetition. One of them said to the other, "Suppose there were Silurians all along under the sea, and thus the Sea Devils were born. Originally they would have been called the Sea Silurians, but the name Sea Devils was chosen. I'm not sure which one I prefer better."
Sea Silurians is fun to say because you've got that alliteration. But Sea Devils, I think, is more memorable. Although it also implies more that they're evil.
Which is kind of like a poor thing of phrasing, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Because here, I don't think we're entirely evil, but
well, they don't do anything in these first 2 episodes. So
true. You got a good point. So the Navy has like a strong connection in Doctor Who writers. Like Barry Letts, the show producer at the time, was in the Navy. John Pertwee was in the Navy, and Malcolm Hulke was in the Navy. Across the 7 seas, we're going to get copyright striked any second now. But Barry Letts was the one who approached the Navy to film quite a lot of the story here. The Royal Navy offered full support for free in exchange for promotion, treating the episode as a sort of recruitment film, I guess.
Join the Navy, you'll be attacked by sea monsters.
Well, this was at a point where the Navy were kind of not doing anything. It was kind of in between wars and just not much was going on with them, and we needed more recruits. So I guess it worked out. I don't know how it worked out exactly, but who knows? So the Navy offered a diving bell, hovercraft, experimental speedboats, as well as all of the locations mainly shot around Portsmouth and the Isle of Wight, as well as a lot of the extras being actual Navy personnel. The Royal Navy did decline to give them a helicopter, a nuclear submarine, and the filming location of an oil rig, which is...
I feel like a nuclear submarine was like a... something you say expecting not to get it so you can get the thing you actually want. You know?
I don't know how valid the nuclear submarine request was.
Yeah, that seems like kind of a big ask.
Yeah, but to be fair, the Royal Navy did give him a lot of shit, so for free, and we didn't have to really spend much.
A nuclear sub is, you know, a bit much.
So this was the first story to be shot out of order. It was the second filmed, but the third produced. Like none of the other Doctor Who stories had ever been aired out of order like this before, which is interesting. Usually it's like all the time this is done. Like the first episode is the third shot and all that kind of nonsense.
Yeah.
And the reason for the swapping of the schedules is because we needed more daylight to film outside, because this is a heavy location episode rather than just studios.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And this episode is the first appearance of the Master after the Demons, which we covered last year. If you want to go back and listen to that.
So because the episode starts with him like in prison, So that's why he's in prison. I was like, I wonder what Master got up to that got him sent to prison, but it was him prancing around with his pal Bok that got him sent to the prison. Okay.
Well, to be fair, throughout the entire of season 8, he was the main villain. So like every single episode, he was the guy causing a lot of issue, and I would put him in jail for that as well. Mm-hmm. So as we said, they decided to cut back his role because he was used too much in the last season, and Roger Delgado wanted to find other work as he wasn't necessarily needed that often. However, he found himself being typecast and suffered financially, and it was kind of messy, but still he had Doctor Who to lean back on.
Yeah, you often find that when somebody plays a villain really well in a TV show, they struggle to play anything else, which is tragic, really. But
it happens to a lot of Doctor Who actors, especially during the classic era. Mm-hmm. And also, I just love saying Roger Delgado's full name. Roger Caesar Marius Bernard D. Delgado Torres Castillo Roberto.
That's a true Italian right there. That's like
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 names.
Yeah, it's like Picasso. Picasso, the famous painter's full name is Pablo Diego Jose Francisco de Paula Juan Nepomuceno Maria de los Ramirez Soprano de la Sastrima Trinidad Ruiz y Picasso. I probably mispronounced a lot of those names horrendously, but Italians, it's just paragraphs for names.
So yeah, this in this season 9, yes. He would appear 2 times. I mean, I think he appeared once in season 10 before his unfortunate death of a car crash at the age of... before his unfortunate car crash at the age of 55, which again is way too young.
Yeah, a lot of people die in their 50s. That even Douglas Adams. He died in his 50s as well, and he was a script editor for a while for Doctor Who. It's a curse.
Yeah. And yeah, that's it for Doctor Who. This trivia for the Sea Devils.
Dang, a lot of trivia, a lot of real history dive into name.
Yes,
what's
name.
What's his name?
Of the
oh
title.
my God, what's his name? A writer. Been talking about him for ages. How have I
Malcolm
forgot his name? That's it. The Hulk. Mac Hulk. That was it. There he is. Yes. Anyway, shall we dive into the episode 1 now then, Scott?
Absolutely, yes. Let's go ahead.
And away we go.
Full house. Kings on twos.
Oh, that's marvellous, isn't it? Just marvellous.
Come on, is that your life savings? It's only a couple of quid. I'll give you a chance to get your own back.
I'll forget it.
What's the matter with you?
I don't know. Being stuck out here, I suppose.
It's not so bad. Are you sure you don't want another game?
Do you know there's something funny about this place?
Share the joke.
Well, the place is deserted, right?
So?
Just the 2 of us on maintenance.
Right.
Yet I keep getting the feeling I'm being watched.
So the episode begins, as all Classic Who episodes begin, with just the intro and no cold open, which is lame, because cold opens get me excited each time. The intro for Pertwee still terrifies me with his big spooky face just looking deep into your soul. But it's fun. I like the song. I think it's a good song for the intro. And the episode opens with some sailor boys, I guess army sailors is what they are, panicking and screaming for their lives as one of them jumps on the radio and says that are they going down or are they going to land somewhere?
We're going down. I think
but-
we're going down, yeah.
Yeah, and he's about to send off the SOS thing, and then a big green hand grabs the microphone with this like robotic music that plays, and that same music plays every time the hand appears, which makes the hand seem like it's a robot hand, but it's not a robot hand, it's a fishman hand.
So the music this time was done by Malcolm Clark. This was his first time on the show, and he's like the only composer of the show to be from BBC Radiophonic Workshop, which does like the special sound effects and the theme song. They're usually more into like experimental kind of music, more electricity-based music, and that's where you get your kind of like robotic sirens from. I'm kind of mixed about it in this episode. I kind of like it as like a experimental kind of way.
I like the broader themes, like, of the songs that play, but that specific sting that plays every time the green hand appears, I'm not a fan of. It takes me out of it, because I'm like, that doesn't fit the visuals I'm seeing, because it's not like a mechanical spooky hand. But we then cut to the Doctor, who's on a boat with Joe. Is this Joe?
Yes, it's
yes.
Joe.
Look at me, I'm learning my companions. And some random guy with a mustache. As they're approaching this island, the Doctor pulls out a pair of binoculars, and then we cut to the view of a telescope, which confused me.
I guess at least we had the foresight of adding something in there to be the view of the Doctor, but it should have been a telescope. Not a telescope.
Binoculars.
Binocular view.
It should have been the like overarching two-handed one rather than the single dot. Or the Doctor's blind in one eye, which is something we've just learned.
So originally this scene was supposed to open up with the Doctor water skiing, and it had to be cut due to the most British reason ever, which is fog. Britain is foggy, so it had to be cut. Yeah. John Pertwee was very disappointed because of this, because he loved the opportunity to do an action scene, and that would have been like a perfect opening, in my opinion.
It's a very James Bond opening.
Yeah, it's kind of alluded to in a script later on where he goes into the castle and somebody's like, hey, you're kind of late, and that would mean because he was too busy water skiing, he got distracted, which is like the most Doctor-y thing ever. Yeah,
that would be good. But instead, he tells Joe that this is where this is where the Master's permanent residence is, and we said earlier on, or you told me, rather, this is like the continuation of the Master from the Demons. We've not seen him since. So if we remember what happened in the Demons, at the end of it, he just kind of gets arrested by Unit, and everyone's like, yay! This is where Unit took him. They took him to a prison where he gets to just chill out and get body shamed by the Doctor. So they get off the boat, and the guy with the mustache is like, I'll pick you up later on, bye-bye. And then the Doctor and that get into a Unit car that has no doors or boot. Why are they just shells on wheels?
So the model of this car is actually from France. It's supposed to make it look more like alien to a British audience. This is because the Unit stories in this era was set in the 80s, so it's the near distant future, so we had to make the cars look like it doesn't exist yet. So it's from France, and we cut off the doors to be like, hey, it's the future, man.
No doors in the future.
Yeah.
It just looks really uncomfortable with it.
It does. It really looks odd now. It doesn't look good out of context like this.
No, it doesn't look like it's in the future either. So the Doctor and Joe go into the front door of the big prison, where they're like, oh, hello, sir, guy, who's just ignoring them for some reason. Even though he knows they're coming, he just forgets, and then he looks up and he's like, oh yeah, you guys are here, hello. And they like exchange pleasantries for a bit, and he's like, oh, you're the guy from Unit. And Joe's like, hi, I'm Joe. And then, right, I only know this because of the subtitles. He says, oh, hi, my name's like Mr. Trenchard. But what I hear is, oh, hello, my name is Mr. Trenchard. I have no idea what his name was, if not for the subtitles being there.
Yeah, he is a bit of a mumbler, I think. But also Trenchard is the name of a Royal Navy ship, so I think there's a lot of names of Royal Navy ships in here, like Hart as well is a name that comes up later on.
Interesting. But he asks to see the Doctor's credentials and stuff, and the Doctor's like, oh, we've already been through all of that stuff. And he's like, oh, but we have to, maintain a high security here, let me see them again. Joe gives them to him. And he's like, oh, yes, very nice. And now, are you here to see the prisoner? And the Doctor's got the great line of, yeah, if we ever get the chance. Because this intro's taking forever to get in to actually see the Master. And then they talk a bit about security precautions and how the Master's not tried to escape yet. And we discovered that the guards are all immune to, brainwashing? What the hypnotism? There he is.
Yeah.
The Master's hypnotism. They're all immune to it because of training.
Yeah, which is a bit of a silly demonstration because, the Master could be like, hey, why don't you pretend you're immune to hypnotism, but you're really hypnotized? I'll hypnotize you to pretend you're immune to hypnotism. it doesn't really work that way.
Yeah. Trenchard is like, oh, I'll show you what the master's up to. I'll demonstrate that our men can't be hypnotized by him. And they stand up and they look at the screen, and it's some like early green screen work, but I thought it was pretty effective because it led to a really nice transition where it's like these bars going across the TV. We pan up to the TV, then crossfade into the actual footage of the master, and it was really, really smooth.
So I think the reason for this green screen work is that they couldn't really... Apparently the technology didn't exist to have like a TV screen that big, so they had to green screen it instead. I'm not exactly sure if that's true or accurate, but it's interesting either way. And
I think
yellow
the green screen worked well.
And Doctor Who chose yellow for the green screen work, which is very weird, but
yeah,
don't think of yellow. It's usually blue or green.
Yeah, but I guess I mean, nobody's got that much yellow except Joe's hair. That must have been a nightmare. Though I suppose if you're doing it on film, you can just manually cut. I don't know how green screen works on film. I assume you do it by hand.
I think these were made on videotapes. I don't know. It's all technology lost to us.
Yeah, they wouldn't have been edited on a modern day computer where you just take a pin drop and go, okay, get rid of all the green for me. So yeah, it must have been a nightmare to edit. But anyway, they transition into the master who's reading a book. The guard comes in and he's like, do you want a new book? And he's like, does it look like I finished this one? Except he says it much nicer. And he goes, oh, my bad. He goes to leave. The master stops him. He attempts to hypnotize him. And the guy goes, well, do tell me when you finish your book. And he leaves, and then the master's like, gosh darn, been fooled again. And also, just before that scene happens, the Doctor has a line where he's like, oh my, the master is gaining weight. Which really confuses me into the next scene, because Trenchard goes, yeah, he doesn't get, he's not been able to exercise really while he's been here. Then the very next scene, we see the master exercising.
I know. like a spoiler alert, but the second episode ends with a sword fight. Obviously, he's been exercising somewhat.
Yeah. I don't. It was such a weird line to have.
But also, that demonstration of the hypnosis not working is obviously fake, and the Doctor doesn't really question it. Really, he just kind of goes, "Oh yeah, that makes sense. He can't hypnotize people here. Move on with my day."
Also, I do find it very funny that the only exercise machine that the Master has access to is one that would improve his rowing ability.
Yeah. That's a good point.
Then there's just quite a pleasant scene with the Doctor and the Master where they're just chatting with each other, like old friends, is which the Master and the Doctor are, but you don't have that sort of... It's before... I suppose the Master's still a bit of a cartoon, but he's not really a cartoon in this scene. He's much more of just a guy that's kind of friends with the Doctor. But the main bulk of their conversation is the Doctor asking where the Master's TARDIS is, which made me go, wait, so the Master's had a TARDIS, and he decided to come to Earth just to mess with the Doctor. He could be causing havoc all over the galaxy, and the Doctor can't do anything about it because he's trapped on Earth because he's not allowed to leave.
Yeah.
But the Master is just here voluntarily.
I can't quite remember the specifics of why the Master's on Earth. I think maybe it is for the Doctor, just to be like a foil in the Doctor's existence, but yeah.
Yeah, it was weird, but the Master goes, I'm not going to tell you where my TARDIS is. Duh. And the Doctor's like, yeah, of course, ask a silly question, get a silly answer. And he goes to leave, and the Master's like, oh, the only thing I can ask of you is if you come in and have a chat with me every now and then, just like old buddies, and we'll just have a wee conversation. And Jo is extremely happy. She's like, oh, that's so nice. Okay, bye-bye, Master. Like, I'm pretty sure he's probably kidnapped you so many times.
Yes. But just as the Doctor's about to leave, they kind of go in for a handshake, and then the Doctor changed his mind and is like, bye.
Yeah.
And then he just leaves the room. It's a really nice touch, improvised by the actors. Oh. So it's... Yeah, they really work well together, John Pertwee and Roger Delgado, I think.
Yeah, it was good. And then the Master's like, ha ha ha. He starts exercising on his rowing machine again, and then he starts laughing like he's got some sort of evil plan in the works. But he's on the prison and nobody can be brainwashed, so that's totally fine.
Yeah. And he's changed. He's changed. He's a changed man. He's never going to do evil things again, isn't he?
Nothing to worry about. So the Doctor, he leaves with where the Master is. He goes back to tack to, and he's like, "Oh, let me see your stamps again." And the Doctor's annoyed at having to do the paperwork again, but Joe hands it off. And he's like, "See, we don't treat the guy too badly, do we?" And he's like, "No, it's totally nice here. Okay, bye-bye. Nothing to worry about."
But right before that, there's a scene where the Doctor and Joe are talking to each other, and the Doctor reveals that he and the Master were childhood friends who went to school together. This was the first time they actually hinted at the Doctor and the Master's past together. And in the script, there would have been a moment where Joe would have realised that the Doctor didn't want the Master's TARDIS. And she asks why they're really here. The Doctor hides his true feelings and says, "For a nice trip at the seaside." So obviously he's here just for the Master, which
just
is
to see the Master, yeah.
Which I'm kind of gutted that line is cut, because it's a really good line, I think.
Yeah, it's a good one. But instead, we get lots of lines from Mr. as they're filling out the paperwork. He says, "Bye-bye, one of my men will lead you away." They go out and they get in the car to drive away, and the Doctor looks back at the building like, is something amiss here? I'm not sure. And then we find out immediately that yes, something is amiss.
But right after he looks back, he looks at Joe and he just smiles at her just to try and comfort her. But Joe then looks back as well in discomfort, which is really nice, I think.
Good wee touch. Then Mr. is in with the Master, and he's like, "Haha, we fooled those guys, didn't we? I've been hypnotized all along." And the Master's like, "Yes, excellent." And they have a conversation where Mr. Murder, I don't remember his name, so I'm just going to keep calling him that. Is like, the Doctor didn't really seem interested in the missing boats when I brought them up, and the Master's like, "Why did you bring them up, you idiot?" And he's like, "Oh, well, no harm, no foul, it's fine." But of course, maybe it's not fine. And then weirdly, the Master goes, "Oh, can I get a TV in my room, by the way? A color TV in my bedroom?"
Yes, a color TV, which is...
And then,
which is so 1970s as well, to ask for a color
specifically
TV.
A color TV. Yeah, it caught me by surprise when he's like, "Oh yeah, by the way, I'd really like a TV in my room. That'd be super cool if you could get that for me." The Simpsons is on, and I want to watch them. Of course, The Simpsons wasn't on in the 70s, but the show's set in the 80s, so.
Well, Simpsons wasn't on in the 80s either.
Yeah,
so.
1989, wasn't it?
1989, sure, but
yeah, it's the 80s.
Got you.
Got you.
All of the 80s was in 1989. Sure.
Got you. You don't know when in the 80s this is set. Just the 80s.
Got a point.
He's a big fan. Actually, he's a big fan of The Simpsons season 1, and also whatever the name of that show was where the shorts were on.
Tracy Ullman show.
Yeah, he's really. That's what he wants to watch. He just wants to catch the shorts.
But in the UK, the Tracy Ullman show cut out the shorts because it was on BBC, and the shorts were for the adverts. So
I'm sure the Master can get the US feed. He's got Unit at his disposal.
I guess.
So the Doctor and Mustache Man are walking side by side, having a wee chat about the missing boats. And there's not really a lot of information discovered here, other than the boats have been missing. That guy was, a lifeguard, and that's why he knows the information about the boats going missing and there being no survivors and stuff like that. And then the Doctor's like, "Oh, could you take me out to one of the sites?" And he's like, "Oh, no, I wouldn't do that." And then the Doctor's like, "What if I gave you money and I just went there myself?" And he went, "Yeah, that'll work, bye." And we also find out that Joe's, getting ice cream or something?
Yeah,
she just wasn't in the... Yeah.
She's getting a picture postcard.
Yeah, that was it. Yeah.
Which is
it's just
why.
an excuse for her not to be in the scene. Really,
it's also like the most 1970s thing ever. I haven't heard of a postcard being used in such a long time.
Yeah.
When was the last time you got or bought a postcard?
Must be the early 2000s.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah.
But also, the end of the scene is actually John driving away in a motorboat, which is something you kind of need a license for. But John Pertwee is a man of action, and he does a lot of his own stunts, so good on him.
Wow, yeah. And, it's also the 70s, where health and safety We saw it before where he's riding the bike without any helmet on, you know?
Oh yeah, there's a moment later on where Joe's jumping on the bike without wearing her chin strap.
Yeah. You know, safety precautions. Bleh.
It's a 70s. If you die, you die.
So we cut to the man Hart, who's like a Navy admiral guy. He's sitting and he's getting his receptionist, I guess is what she is, to transcribe something for him, where he's like, you know, we haven't found any survivors. The investigations come up fruitless and things are going terribly for us. And then he notices the doctor out the window and he's like, Come take a look over here. There's just this guy coming up to the beach and nobody's stopping him. Why is nobody stopping him?
I think right before he says we're keeping careful watch as he walks over to the window and sees John Pertwee in a boat.
There's a huge lack of security within the Navy, I guess.
I think that's all of Doctor Who. The Doctor just goes into anywhere he wants to.
Yeah, very casually as well, as we see in a minute. I mean, he's walking up in the beach and he's just going over to one of the lifeboats that I presume were attached to one of the boats that vanished, because the Doctor starts looking at it with a magnifying glass, which at first I thought, why is he trying to burn that boat? Because just the way the sun's hitting, there's like a point of light, like when you're burning ants. But then we see like just a massive group of soldiers running up to the Doctor.
And these are real Navy soldiers. They're extras, which is why we don't speak, because we'd have to pay them extra.
Oh, interesting. And the Doctor just looks at them with a smile, and he's like, "Oh, hi guys," which I really enjoy how casual he is. And then he just goes, "Can I see your commanding officer?" Essentially, take me to your leader, but said you know with a bit more tongue in cheek, because these are the quote unquote good guys. We're with Joe for like a hot second when the mustache guy's suddenly wearing an orange helmet. I don't know why he's wearing it at all, but Joe's basically buying the motorcycle off him to go find the Doctor, and she gets the helmet and she rides off. It's a very short scene, but just the mustache guy randomly wearing the helmet instead of like just giving it to her. Like he decided to like, oh yeah, here's my bike, and this is what a helmet does.
But yeah, as I said earlier, she doesn't wear a chin strap in the first scene, but when she's driving off, she's suddenly replaced by a man who is wearing this chin strap, because there was like 12 stunt women in Britain in the 1970s, which is insane.
Wow.
So yeah, they had to be replaced by a man named Stuart Fell.
That's an unfortunate name for a stuntman.
I know. But yeah, he doubles for Kate quite a lot in this episode, which is great.
We get a really like a scene that makes you feel high when you're watching it, when the Master turns on his TV and it's like stop motion puppets who are just whistling.
Dude, do you seriously not know the show?
I don't know the show.
Clangers.
No. I've never heard of it.
The Clangers was on CBeebies for a long time. It just recently got remade into a new show, I think.
Never heard of it.
I grew up on it. It's such a great show, and this scene would be replicated like 35 years later in the Sound of the Drums, where Master is watching Teletubbies.
Yeah, I get that one because I watched Teletubbies as a kid, but I don't get this one, where the Master's watching it, and it goes on for like 30 seconds at least, where we're just watching the show and the Master's like whistling along with them, and I've never been like, what am I watching?
Yeah, this 90-second sequence is because the show was running under, so you're like, oh shit, we have to add in an extra scene somewhere, and this was the scene we chose to add in.
What a weird scene.
But the script makes it clear that the Master is joking by watching this show. Whereas in the 2007 episode of The Sound of Drums, when he's watching Teletubbies, who is he joking with? He's seriously watching Teletubbies and enjoying it, which I don't
That's
like
understandable.
as much.
That's understandable. But see, I did not read Delgado's performance here as he was joking. I read it as he was genuinely interested in the show and thought he was like, there's like some aliens on the TV. This is a weird show. What are they talking about?
I think the script makes it more clear, but in this show it's not as clear, but
yeah.
it's still a fun scene, I think.
Yeah, and then Mr. comes in and he's like, why are you watching a kid's show? And the Master turns off the TV and he's like, But Trenchard, who's the man, is like, oh, I bought the maps that you wanted, by the way. And the master's like, oh, sick. A nice one. I think those were the exact lines. And he starts plotting out where the boats have vanished on the map, which creates a wee triangle. And right in the center of the triangle is this abandoned shipyard. And Trenchard's like, hey, it's not going to be abandoned for longer. There's contractors there right now turning it into a sonar testing facility. To which the master goes,
So in the script, this sea fort would have been an oil rig, but in real life, oil rigs banned women, meaning that Katie Manning couldn't have been filmed there. Which is
that's a very off the time sort of.
I know,
thing
50
I didn't
years
know
ago.
about.
It's
Goodness.
just, yeah. It wasn't until 1976 that a woman was allowed onto a North Sea rig. Do you have any guesses onto as this woman it was?
I have no idea.
This woman was Elizabeth Sladen,
Oh.
Katie Manning's successor. She was filming like a BBC educational programming, and they just let her on. And she was the first woman to be allowed on a North Sea oil rig, which is
It's amazing the whole thing
stuff.
didn't catch on fire.
I know.
They got lucky there. Jesus Christ. We cut to the. I literally just said it. What's it called?
Sea fort.
The sea. Yeah, we cut to the sea fort where there's the two guys playing a card game. It's not. It feels like poker, but it doesn't quite seem like poker. I don't know what they're doing, but they're playing a game. One of the guys loses, and he's like, I lost all the money. And the guy's like, come on, it's not it's like a $5. Chill out. And he's like, I don't know, maybe I'm just sick of being here. And he gives us a lot of exposition in one sentence where he's like, it's just me and you out here contracting, isn't it? Just the two of us. And we're staying here all the time. Nobody else is out here with us. And the guy's like, yeah, nobody else is out here with us. You're right. It's just the two of us. And then he's like, then why do I feel like I'm being watched? And we cut to the green hand like reaching out at kind of nothing, and we get that sting again, and it's so loud and so it doesn't fit at all. I really don't like it.
So in preparation of watching the Sea Devils, I watched Doctor Who and the Silurians and Doctor Who Warriors of the Deep, and those two episodes are just all noise. There's like beeping every episode. There's like there's no silence involved. It's just technology just beeping everywhere.
That's how you know it's in the future, though.
So this scene isn't interesting on the surface, but the interesting thing is who these two men are. Hickman, who is the thinner of the two men, was played by Hugh Filcher, and he was considered to be the Seventh Doctor.
Oh.
And the guy Clark, who is the bigger man, is played by Declan Mulholland, and he is the original Jabba the Hutt.
Oh,
if you
wow.
remember, the human Jabba the Hutt.
Before they replaced him with Slugman in New Hope.
Yes.
Yeah.
So basically the story is, in A New Hope, they filmed a scene with Jabba the Hutt. He was supposed to be human, but then that scene got cut, and when he appeared in The Empire
Edition.
Strikes Back...
He was a Slugman, yeah.
Yeah, and then they reinserted that scene for a special edition of A New Hope, and they just added CGI over that man. But yeah, I thought that man looked familiar, because I've seen the original footage of a human, and yeah, it's him. It's him.
Interesting.
Which is really fascinating.
Yeah.
But he died in 1999, and in his will he left residuals to pay for bursaries for acting students, which is a really sweet thing to do.
Yeah, nice one.
So when I bought my copy of The Sea Devils, I helped paid towards these acting students.
Then we cut back to the Doctor and Hart, where Hart's like, why didn't you just set up a meeting if you wanted to see me? Why did you have to run on the beach? And the Doctor was like, I was just following impulses. Doesn't he ask for the Doctor's paperwork in this scene? And the Doctor's like, I don't carry paperwork on me. Ask Joe for that, even though Joe's not with him. But there's this he starts talking about the boat and the scorch marks on it. And I think Pertwee does a really, really good job here, because he has to draw the like curves that the scorch marks are in, and he does it perfectly. He does like 5 of them in a row perfectly. And I was like, damn, that's impressive.
That's what I like about Doctor Who. It's when the Doctor is presented as like a scientist.
He's showing the like science things.
It's the same with the demons, where he gave a lecture about history and all that. Just I really like watching Pertwee be a scientist. There's something about that hasn't really been captured in the modern era that much.
Yeah. And what we find out with those scorch marks is that it meant that somebody was deliberately trying to sink the boat from underneath. Which, I wonder if that's going to be the big green hand we keep seeing that's responsible for that. I don't know. And then the Doctor gets his attention distracted when he looks at a board and he's like, where are those 3 dots on the board? Which is basically just the information we found out from the Master again. Although it did lead to a really nice shot, I thought, where the camera like panned behind the board. I thought that was some nice camera work.
Yeah, there's a lot of good camera work here, especially given the limitations of shooting a TV show in the 1970s. There's a lot of work being done here to make it look cinematic.
And then the receptionist gets a phone call, and she's like, oh, a lady called Joe's here with the paperwork. I'm like, how did Joe immediately know where the Doctor went? And how did she get there on a motorbike when the Doctor had to take a boat to get there?
And how did she get the number? And there's a lot of questions.
We cut back to the 2 guys in the abandoned sea fort place. And the guy's like, hey, do you want to play drafts instead? You can't lose money in drafts, which I assume drafts is an old name for checkers because it just looks like checkers.
Yeah.
And then the guy's called Hickman, the guy that almost got cast as the Doctor, and the other guy's Jabba the Hutt. And Hickman hears a noise, and he's like, what was that? And the guy's like, I don't know, the wind? And he's like, no, I'm going to grab a flare. We're being, people are here. He grabs the flare and he runs away, and then we hear him scream as he gets killed dead. Which, it took almost 20 minutes for someone to die in an episode of Classic Who. I think that's a record.
Yeah. Like, when we watched Resurrection of the Daleks, people are dead
within the first
minute.
scene. Yeah.
It was crazy.
A lot of people. But the Jabba the Hutt is like, oh my god, what was that screaming? Let's go find where Hickman is. He also runs, and then he sees Hickman's corpse. And I thought Hickman was pulling a really good dead face, where he's got his eyes really wide, like he looks like he's seen something terrifying. And we catch a glimpse of the back of a sea devil's head, and it looks pretty good. It does look a bit like a puppet from just the way it's shot there, but I quite like the design of them.
Yeah, I just love in Classic Who whenever we keep Evelyn in shadows. It really helps keep interest and makes them look less cheap. Which, I'm not saying the Sea Devils look cheap because they are very expensive for the day, but it is not
they're
to
dated
modern standards.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a point where the score just sounds like it's sound effects, like somebody's shooting a laser or something. It doesn't really sound like a score, which is really confusing to me at points.
Yeah, I'm not I like some of the audio music audio music as if there's a visual music. I like some of the soundtrack for certain scenes, but it's whenever the Sea Devils show up, the music becomes just nonsense that doesn't sound like music. And I'm not a big fan of it. So the Doctor's chatting with Hart, and Hart's like, cool, you guys can just leave now, bye. And the Doctor's like, what? No, I don't want to go. I want to go to the fort. And he's like, why would I ever take you to the fort? Leave. And the Doctor's like, no. And the guy's like, yes. And then the Doctor's like, come on, you can take me. Take a boat. Come on, let's go. We'll go out on a boat and we'll go there. And the guy's like, no, that's not happening. I'm not going to just, do what you say and follow your whims. I am a naval captain. I have men under my command. What are you talking about? And the Doctor compares him to Horatio Nelson, which is a name I know, but not somebody I know properly. I assume he was some sort of adventurer from the past. Let's do a quick Google.
Let's look it up. Live on the show. Well, not live, but, pre-recorded on the show.
Horatio Nelson, the first Viscount of Nelson, was Vice Admiral, First Duke, also known as Admiral. He was a British flag officer in the Royal Navy. What's he famous for? Let's see. Was an English sea captain and one of Britain's greatest naval heroes. Nelson commanded the British fleet during the Napoleonic War, fighting against the French and Spanish and securing a series of decisive naval victories. So it's a British Navy captain who killed a bunch of French guys.
Yeah.
Nice. And the Doctor Hart's like, yeah, Horatio Nelson was a real cool guy if you're to believe history books. And the Doctor's like, excuse me, Horatio Nelson was a personal close friend of mine. And then he walks away, and Hart's got a great line, and he's like, oh my god, he's as mad as a hatter. Where he plays it at first, I thought he did it really well, where he's playing it at first, like he's like, oh my, the Doctor was friends with Horatio. Whoa. And then it's just that thing where he's like, yeah, no, that guy's insane. Like,
My question to you is, how many famous friends has the Doctor had at this point?
everyone. If you're
pretty much everyone.
Yeah,
eh?
if you're from history and are famous, the Doctor has met you and probably kissed you.
Pretty much, yeah.
Suddenly, the Doctor and Joe are in a boat, and I feel like I've missed a scene. Where did they get the boat from? Did they just?
They got it from the Navy people.
But the Navy people said you can't have a boat. Go away.
No, it's probably the boat the Doctor came in on.
Okay, then why did he ask to get another? If this one's fine, why did he ask for another one? I assumed that he couldn't take the dinky little boat because the thing's way out in the ocean. But no, it's no problem. It's so weird. But they're there at the fort suddenly, and they jump off onto a ladder, and Jo looks like she's having the hardest time climbing it. She looks really uncomfortable and squished climbing up that ladder.
Well, that's because this is a man, Stuart Fell again. Because the ladder is slippery and we didn't want to get the actors falling down. The Doctor is played by Terry Walsh, who looks remarkably like John Pertwee, according to John Pertwee himself. But Jo, of course, is played by Stuart Fell, and you can, if you pay attention to his ass, he's kind of wriggling around.
To me, I was distracted by the really long legs that are like crushed up in the ladder, and I was like, that's weird. Well, you look really uncomfortable there.
Yeah, I'm just attracted to his ass. It's
Okay.
just wiggling around, my dude.
Whatever floats your proverbial boat. So the Doctor and Jo are in the fort, and they're kind of walking around, and they're like, "Come on, let's take a look around this place." And we cut out to their boat that they came in, where we see the Green Hand again, and the dumbass sting music that comes with it. Where it's and then we cut back. I thought it was a pretty nice tension building. Where we're cutting back and forth between the boat and the Doctor and Jo constantly, where they're just kind of walking around the fort, and they just see like the game that the guys were playing, and they're like, there must be people nearby here somewhere. And we cut back to the boat, and suddenly it's on fire. We cut back to the Doctor. They're walking a bit more. They hear the explosion of the boats blowing up, and they run out to a nearby window, and they're like, oh, the boat's gone. Anyway, let's go look for some people. We'll have to find a radio to get off here now. And then we see a sea devil. It's our first proper look at their face from the corner, and it's a pretty nice little shot where it's just hiding in between the stairs.
Yeah, it looks pretty decent.
The Doctor and Jo make their way to the dead body of the guy. What I really like about this scene actually is surprisingly the audio. Because every movement they're making is echoing around them, and all their lines of dialogue they say are echoing, which for me just made the scene seem really tense.
Earlier when Jabba the Hutt was going after his friend, there was silence as well, but then it got intercut with the weird music. But it works a lot better when it's just silence, because it makes it feel lonely and there's people everywhere. And
you
just,
can hear the echo of Jo being like, "We've got to get out of here." It's really good. But they see the guy and he's dead, and they're like, "Oh no, he's dead." And then there's a sea devil marching towards him. And what I really liked with that is the audio for the sea devil is just, it's just like really like terrifying grunting, and you're like, "Oh, what is that noise?" And it was really good. And then of course it's Doctor Who. That's the random ass cliffhanger that's going to get solved immediately in the next episode. But that's the end of the first episode.
You know, if this was 1972, that cliffhanger would have made me tune in next week.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah, it was good.
It works.
I would say for a first episode, especially of like a 6-part story, it does a pretty good job pace-wise and actually setting up the story. Where the problem you can get, which we saw with Sarah Jane's Farewell, I forget the name of that episode.
It was The Hand of Fear.
Yeah, with The Hand of Fear is where you get episodes where there's no dialogue and someone's walking for 15 minutes, where literally no plot's getting set. But in this one, we get set up where the Master is. The Master's brainwashing a bunch of people at UNIT. There's boats going missing. There's these sea devils. The Doctor is now investigating them. You know, it's enough to set. This is a 20-minute plot. So we've set everything in motion, and now we're gonna not do much for the next 2, 3, 4, 5 episodes.
In that episode, we also got some nice interactions between the Doctor and the Master, and Doctor and Joe, and some other characters here and there. So yeah, it's a really fun episode to open up on.
Yeah,
I tuned in following week.
I think it's a good part 1, definitely.
Although most people didn't see part 1 because there was power cuts all over the country. So before episode 2, they had to show like a wee recap of what happened last week in case people missed out.
That's
apparently
nice.
Apparently, like, richer people had, like, these mini TVs you could just wind up. They just watched it on there.
Interesting. What a weird time.
I know.
But shall we get ready to jump into episode 2? Play a clip
Hell
here. Play. Go clip. Go clip. Go.
Good boy. Good clip.
Doctor? Those things that attacked us. You said you'd seen something like it before.
Something very similar, certainly. They emerged from some caves in Derbyshire.
The Silurians, wasn't it? The Brigadier was telling me.
That's a complete misnomer. The chap who discovered them must have got the period wrong. Now, properly speaking, they should have been called the Eocenes.
That was that race of super reptiles that had been in hibernation for billions of years, wasn't it?
That's right, and if you want my opinion, there's another of their colony right here beneath us.
Well, something seems to have woken them up.
Probably the rebuilding of this fort.
But I thought you said they lived in caves.
Oh, this is a different species, completely adapted to life underwater.
And they've been sinking the ships.
Very likely.
Why? I mean, why are they so hostile? What have we done to them?
Well, they still think of Earth as their planet, Joe, and they want it back. As far as they're concerned, man is just an ape who got above himself.
So we get our conclusion to the cliffhanger from episode 1 as the like huffing and puffing beast gets revealed to be Jabba the Hutt all along. And really, I think our biggest clue that it wasn't a sea devil should have been that there was no music playing. That immediately plays in a second when we actually do see a sea devil, and instead it was just like actually tense when you could only hear the breathing and not the soundtrack. But we see that it's Jabba the Hutt, and he's like, "Oh, the sea devils. The villain's called the Sea Devil," and so he's the guy that names them Sea Devils. He coins the name.
That's a good point.
Yeah, interesting.
So one of the things I don't like about this episode is it kind of retreads onto Doctor Who and the Silurians, which was the previous episode to feature the Silurian race. So Doctor Who and the Silurians had a lot of people seeing the Silurians to just being in a state of fear. And it's kind of repeated here. I don't mind it as much because I think the Sea Devils does it in a newer way. It's not as focused on it as it was in the Silurians, but it's still a shame to see repetition in Doctor Who, I think.
Yeah. So the Doctor takes Jabba the Hutt into his bed, and the guy's the whole time just sitting there like, "Oh, sea devil, monster," which I really feel like it's not the best, and I feel like his direction really was just, "Oh, you're just kind of like scarred and messed up from seeing them, so just like kind of be like just saying it's like you've seen a monster," and that was it, and because he doesn't really do anything other than a sea devil, Hickman. But we find out that the Sea Devils ripped out the radio, and then the Doctor, he starts saying that if we can find the receiver radio, we can turn it into a transmitter, and he starts listing off a bunch of like scientific radio things, which sounds right. It sounds like it could work, but then he says that you turn the speaker into a microphone, and I'm like, what? That's not how speakers work.
Yeah, Doctor Who isn't the most scientifically accurate show.
See, it had me where like everything he was saying was like, okay, I could believe that. What do you mean you're going to turn the speaker into a microphone? Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's 100% accurate and there's something in a speaker that you could flip around and make it into a microphone, but I doubted it.
And also, because this techno babble is just so insanely long and just complicated, John Pertwee the entire time is just reading his script off of a little mirror he's holding in his hand.
Well, he does a good job hiding it. I didn't notice he was reading it off the script.
And also, in the previous scene, they're trying to help the guy to his bed. In the original script, he would have been lifting the man, but for obvious reasons, he couldn't be lifting him.
Jabba the Hutt's a bit big. He's a large fella.
Yes.
But the Doctor then runs out to look for the receiver radio after he gives the Jabba the Hutt some medicine and he falls asleep. And he just leaves Joe again.
Yeah.
He just likes leaving. He just leaves Joe and does stuff. This is the second time he's done that.
Yeah, when I watched the Silurians, he did the exact same thing with Liz Shaw. It's just like, why are you always leaving these companions on their own?
Yeah.
It's such a 70s thing of, the woman can't do much here, so I'm just going to go on my own.
Yeah. So the Doctor's out exploring the sea fort and he runs into a sea devil. And what I really liked is immediately he's like, don't be scared, I don't want to hurt you. Trying to chat to the sea devil, and the sea devil's like, haha, pew pew, and fires a gun at him with a pretty good looking effect, which I assume they got by actually burning a piece of the tape, because that's what it looks like.
It's a practical effect, yes.
Yeah. And then he runs away from the sea devil. He runs all the way back to Joe, and it was very, very funny to me because the soundtrack's going mental when he's getting chased by the sea devil, and the second it cuts to Joe, it stops. It's just the hardest cut off, and it's Joe's like, do you want any tea or sugar? And like, it was the most abrupt ending to the chase scene possible. It really made me laugh. It was...
But what do you think of a sea devil's design?
Their necks are too long. That's the biggest problem I have with them.
Well, do you know why their necks are too long? It's because basically the mask has been worn as a hat.
Yeah, I assume you can't see out the eyes. Yeah, and so they're seeing out the neck.
They're peeping through the neck, which is really hard for the people in the costumes because they can't really see much. So they're just running around just blind, basically.
Yeah, but the neck's too long. I really, and I'm looking forward to the Easter or we assume it's going to be an Easter special, the next Doctor Who special, because I think the updated design for the Sea Devils does look excellent.
Yeah, I like that it looks very similar to this design, but just obviously modernized.
Yeah, I'll give Chibnall one thing. I really like his practical costumes that he's been doing recently.
So the director, Michael E. Bryant, wanted the Sea Devils to look like they could be found in real life. So the heads are actually modeled on like sea turtles, which is a really good design. Yeah. And Michael E. Bryant had problems with the original costumes, though. He said he was not prepared to inflict naked sea devils onto children. It would be immoral and wrong and would give them unfortunate ideas.
Yeah.
What unfortunate ideas would naked sea devils inflict on the country?
Joke's on him, because I guarantee you I could find sea devil porn right now if I wanted to.
So he was very angry about the fact the sea devils were naked, the original costume. So a woman on the set who was in the costume department cut holes into netting and called it a day.
Yeah, it's not the best looking costume they have, is it?
It kind of works because you just imagine all these fishermen leaving their nets in the sea. Yeah,
that's what I imagine it as well, as like sea nets that have just kind of stuck onto them, or that they've taken and interpreted into clothing over time. But it's like kind of a mediocre costume. It's not the most attention grabbing.
But basically the idea is the Sea Devils are too sophisticated to be naked, but the Silurians were more sophisticated and they were naked the last time we saw them, so I don't know what the difference is.
Yeah, who knows. But speaking of the Silurians, the Doctor blocks up the door and then he's like attaching cables to the metal door and running the wires to it, and he's like, it's like those lizard creatures we met in the caves. I thought it was going to be like this, which is obviously a reference to the Silurians, where these are just ocean Silurians. Yeah. And then we get a really good effect of the door melting of the which looks like they did just cut a hole, like burn a hole through the door, because it's really, really good looking.
Yeah, it's a polystyrene door, and also on the costume. The costume was designed by John Friedlander. He also designed the Sontarans, Zygons, and Davros. Now, the thing about these designs are they always go back to the original design. The Sontarans came back recently. They were pretty much identical to the 70s design. Zygons never changed. Davros was always the same, so I think he's a really good costume designer. He's great.
Yeah, his designs do look good. And the melting of the door with the polystyrene was really effective. It was like the scene in The Phantom Menace when Qui-Gon Jinn is burning a hole through the Trade Federation door in the very first scene, and with the big lightsaber, and he's like, burn, hoo hoo hoo. And it looked, I was really impressed with it. And then we get the big green arm reaching through again, and we get about 50 reaction shots of everybody's face looking at the door. It goes on for just really long.
Also, another thing I forgot to mention, before this, when the Doctor's running around the ship, there's a lot of Dutch angles, which is really nice, because you don't really see that in Classic Who a lot. It's more static camera work in Classic Who, and they really went to try and make it more cinematic here.
Yeah. The Doctor electrifies the door, and the Sea Devil, makes a weird sounding scream and runs away, in which the Doctor and Joe then chase after it. And they run down the steps, and then they kind of stop, and we cut away. The only thing that I thought was strange about this ending of the scenes, when the Sea Devil's leaving, and it's stepping over some of the scaffolding that's in the way, it's panting, but it just sounds like a regular guy going, Yeah,
it doesn't sound like for normal voices. Like there's a filter for voices.
Yeah.
It doesn't really sound like it's been applied here.
Yeah, it's weird.
I guess it's more logical that way, because it makes sense that the Doctor confused it for the Fat Man earlier.
Yeah, I guess. So we cut to Hart again, and his receptionist is like, hey, remember that weird guy that was here yesterday? Yeah, he's gone missing. And Hart's like, oh, for God's sake, well, let's check the fort. And she's like, yeah, I tried, but they're not answering their radio, because obviously, as we know, their radio's been destroyed. And he's like, oh, well, okay, we'll get Sea Rescue out then. Jesus Christ. And we cut to some stock footage of a helicopter taking off. And, I was like, cool, that's fair enough, whatever. And then we cut back to the Doctor and Joe, where he's trying to fix the radio to turn it into a transmitter and not a receiver. And he's like, haha, I've done it. And he turns on the radio, and we get 15 seconds of just listening to a radio show.
Yeah, the DJ on this is Michael Bryant, the director, which is funny, just listening to the Doctor trying to fix stuff and it going horribly wrong as the Doctor does things.
Yeah, I did enjoy the joke that the DJ is saying, where he's like, hey, this is for you guys, so if you're feeling isolated and alone somewhere, don't worry, because I enjoyed that bit. But then the Doctor and Joe start talking about the Silurians, in case we didn't know who they were, or in case we had seen it and we wanted some confirmation, and how the Sea Devils are like the cousins, essentially. They're a different species that also adapted on Earth, much like the Silurians did, just this time under the ocean. The Doctor also makes a very nerdy clarification when talking about the Silurians, when he says that it's really an inaccurate name, and they should be called, what was it, the Eocens or something?
Yeah,
based
Eocene.
off, the Eocenes, based off the actual time period in which they came about. It's it's like in Jurassic Park when people say, actually the T-Rex wasn't around in the Jurassic period. That's inaccurate.
I wrote notes down for this. But the reason, who actually calls them the Silurians in the first place?
I have no clue.
The Doctor.
What an idiot! What an idiot! What a stupid idiot, man.
So here he is saying, "Oh, the chap who discovered them must have gotten it wrong. He discovered them. Like, what the fuck." I think
he just doesn't want to admit that he was wrong. Yeah.
That's my reading on it too. But yeah, this whole scene is in response to a ton of letters from scientists and geologists saying the Silurian era didn't have reptile life. But calling them the Eocenes is apparently almost right, because this era was when mammals started to evolve. But because the Silurians make mention of primitive apes. However, it is still incorrect, as during the Eocene period, dinosaurs had been extinct for 10 million years, and the Silurians had a dinosaur guard in their caves. So yeah, they're still wrong.
I think there's no winning, because they've decided that they were around the same time as apes, and also around the same time as dinosaurs, which in reality weren't around in the same time at all. The thing with the dinosaur times that's really hard to wrap your head around is, I think it's like, say, like the Stegosaurus and the T-Rex were further apart in history than we are to the T-Rex. Like, the dinosaur period went on for just so goddamn long. Like, it's really hard to wrap your head around how long And how many extinction... There was like 4 or 5 extinction events that happened to the dinosaurs alone before the last one came. And we were like, hey, hello. So, you know, it's Doctor Who. The Silurians, they exist in the universe, but they definitely couldn't have existed.
Doctor Who isn't scientifically accurate, at least not in this era. I think in the 60s...
What are you talking about? He's about to turn a headphone into a speaker.
In the 60s...
A microphone. There we go.
In the 60s, we were more conscious about making the show scientifically accurate, but here it's just like a load of shit, basically.
Yeah, and then after this, they're like, screw it, we're just going to commit murder all the time. Violence and murder.
Malcolm Hulke basically admitted he just called them Silurians because it sounded cool.
Yeah, it's fair enough, because it does. It's a good name. It's memorable, isn't it? So the Doctor is using his radio that he's now turned into a transmitter. He says, hello, is anybody out there? We're, wait, hang on, what's our call sign? Joe goes and checks the call sign. They get the call sign. And then he starts again. He's like, hello, we are, whatever the call sign is, Osco Tango Bravo or something like that. And he starts calling out. Joe's like, that'll never work, Doctor. And then immediately it works. As the rescue helicopter's like, yo, what's up? It's us, the rescue helicopter people. We see the helicopter, we cut back, and we get a really great joke where the Doctor's looking at it and he's like, well, that's a good piece of work if I've ever seen it. He turns it off and then the thing explodes in his hand.
Yeah, it's such a Doctor Who moment, isn't it? Just like you can imagine any Doctor doing that.
Yeah, I thought it was really good.
But also the helicopter that comes to pick them up isn't the one that left the Navy base.
Yeah.
So it's a different helicopter.
There's only so much stock footage.
They could have just gone on the internet, Googled stock footage and just found it. You know?
And then download easy. So the Doctor and Joe have been rescued, and is it my understanding that they left Jabba the Hutt behind?
Yeah, I think so.
Because they just left him. What?
maybe he was just too heavy for a helicopter. It's not impossible.
Yeah, they just leave him. They're back with Hart, and Hart's like, what are you talking about? Sea devils, that's madness. And the Doctor's like, go, call them up. Call up Jabba the Hutt and find out. And they call up Jabba the Hutt, and he's like, oh, he's delirious. He's still chatting about sea devils. I'm like, why would you leave that poor man behind? What were you... That man needs medical attention.
But also the sting again just...
It made no sense this time. Like, usually the sting happens when we see a sea devil, but this time it's just the word sea devil led to the massive sting. It didn't make any sense.
But also, as if hearing the word sea devil from a delirious man is enough to convince the man that the sea devils exist.
So, we then cut to probably the most engaging scene of Doctor Who I've ever witnessed, where it's a shot of a car driving down a street for about 15 seconds. Then it parks, and then we watch the two guys get out the car, probably for about another 10 seconds. Then he says, okay, I'll see you later. And then the guy walks away. Then that guy taps the car. And then he walks away, and that's the scene. I think it's Mr.
It's Trenchard.
Yeah,
he's taking the master on to the naval base.
Yeah, sweet Christ, what a long that's like a solid minute that they managed to kill with that scene. That's the stuff that I just love in classic Who.
And the music really sounds like we're just playing a good old game of Pong. It's just beep, 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 beep.
Yeah, it's...
But boy, Roger Delgado looks great in that hat.
It does suit him. Sweet Jesus Christ. So the next scene we get, the Doctor's chatting with Hart again, and it starts off as a good scene, where they're chatting, and he's like, we can't just go in and attack these sea devils because they're intelligent beings. We have to try and find a peaceful solution to this. And then Mr. Trenchard comes in, and he's like, hello, ladies and gentlemen, you mind if I come in for a second? I just wanted to chat about the golf. And then they proceed to talk about golf for what feels like 5 minutes, where he's like, oh, well, you're just getting a bit busy, and I feel like you want somebody to get a stand in. And I was thinking to myself, maybe maybe Hart have a good one, and I'll get somebody to stand in and play golf, because it's getting a bit on, and I would quite like to play golf, but really, I'm not expecting you to come along and play golf with me, so I thought I'd stop by. And the whole time the doctor's just staring at him like, why are you still talking?
Oh yeah, just a little behind the scenes. When Matthew and I record this, we usually watch the episode alongside it so we can remember what the scenes are and all that. And I'm just squiggling away at this scene because it's so boring. It's just a guy talking about golf. It's just so dull.
It's they've killed 5 minutes with that car scene, and now with talking about golf. They've managed to. Now we only have 12 minutes of the episode left. And what's happened in this episode? Yeah. The Master's now on the island, now with the soldiers. That's it.
But you say you like that scene of the Doctor just being like, hey, we can't go out and destroy the sea devils, and because they could be good people, if you like that scene, you should really go watch the Silurians, because it handles that whole topic much better, and it's not one-dimensional.
But do they talk about golf then?
No, we talk about gardening, like in Canine and Company.
Okay, I'm sorry.
But yeah, you can tell this episode is just like, okay, we need to get to the cliffhanger. I don't know how to fill this out, so I'm just going to talk about golf for like 5 minutes.
Yeah, it's...
This isn't the last instance of golf in this story either.
Thankfully. Hell yeah. So we get another really long scene where the Master's looking at some cardboard boxes for a bit, and the music's like straight out of Zelda. I thought it was pretty funky music, but it didn't fit the scene at all. Eventually, another soldier comes in, and he's like, wait, should I know who you are? And the Master's like, yeah, I'm on the special audit, and these are defective items. And he's like, I'm going to phone the boss and check. And the Master attempts to brainwash him, and it doesn't work, and so he karate chops him on the neck, and he passes out, and then the Master leaves. See, that took me about 30 seconds to explain, but it goes on for about 2.5 minutes.
Yeah, it's a bit of a long scene, isn't it? But yeah, I always equate the Master using his hypnosis as a Jedi mind trick, because it's the same, isn't it?
Yeah, except there was like a reason behind the Jedi mind trick working. It's the Force and stuff, whereas the Master just opens his eyes wide.
Yeah, when was the last time the Master uses his hypnosis? Has he used it in the modern era?
I don't remember off the top of my head. I feel like he might have used it with John Sim, maybe, as like a reference sort of thing. Or they made reference to him no longer being able to hypnotize. I don't know. But he's definitely not used it recently enough to remember.
Yeah, maybe it's just a Roger Delgado thing. Maybe he just has those eyes.
Maybe. Yeah, did the corpse version of the Master ever brainwash people?
I can't remember. It's been so long.
The one that's just the Emperor. But if the Emperor was a skeleton. So we're back to more golf talk as the guy's like, well, we could replace you in the tournament. And thankfully all the other characters are getting annoyed with the golf talk and try to get rid of him. And he doesn't quite want to leave yet. He's like, oh, so Doctor, what's going on with you? Oh, yes. But eventually they got rid of him, and the Doctor's like, okay, thank Christ that guy's gone. Anyway, so we need to close down this part of the ocean. And, can't let any boats go this way. And the guy's like, we can't do that. This is a major shipping lane. There'd be protests all over. And he's like, I'm pretty sure there'll be protests if people keep dying as well. Which was a pretty fair point. Jo gets bored of the conversation and looks out the window where she sees the Master, and she's like, Doctor, quick! And the Doctor goes, shut up, woman! He completely dismisses Jo to start. It took me it was just randomly aggressive. Where I'm like, why would Jo would only shout you over? She's not going to be like, look, a butterfly! Come on, what are you doing, Doctor? But he eventually does go over to the window, and he's like, no, there's nobody there. But Joe's like, I swear I saw him. And at this point, I thought, oh, okay, the Doctor's going to dismiss Jo, and there's going to be this whole big fallout sort of thing. But no, he immediately believes her, and is like, okay, we need to get red alert and save everybody because Joe's just seen the Master, and I really appreciate that.
Yeah, so did I. I didn't really make. I didn't really thingy the reference to the. I don't know what I'm saying. What am I saying? I didn't really consider the thing where the Doctor is like, "Oh, shut up now." But the moment where the Doctor kind of doesn't believe her for a second is something I considered, and I was like, oh, please don't go down this route. Please don't go down the route of gaslighting the lady. But yeah, obviously the golf talk is some sort of distraction method for the Master.
Yeah, absolutely. He was trying to kill time so the Master could get in, but it's boring.
and it fucking doesn't work because the Master kills the guy.
Gets caught immediately.
Gets caught immediately. Just
yeah, and instead he's trying to do two things. He's trying to give the Master time, and he's trying to also give the episode time so they don't have to cover the plot. You know.
And also, Jo has fucking amazing eyesight.
Yeah,
she sees him from 5 stories up.
Yeah,
it's insane.
Yeah, from above, like looking, and he's wearing a hat.
I know. The only way she could possibly see him is with his
goatee.
beard.
Yeah. Incredible eyesight.
Which is funny because in real life, Katie Manning, not the best eyesight.
Oh, wow. We have a scene where the Doctor and that are talking with the guy that the Master knocked unconscious, and it's basically just telling us information we already knew, but it's letting our characters find out the information that the Master's here, that Trenchard is working with the Master, and that they're up to something, and that's really the entirety of the scene. It's no new information is gained from it.
Again, if I was to make maybe a 90-minute edit to this entire story, half this episode would be cut out. More than half, actually.
Yeah, I'd include the start of the episode and the end of the episode, and the middle part.
Yeah.
Well,
the middle part you have to show the Master sneaking in the base, but that's about it, really. You could cut
out most of the golf talk. You know? You could start with him being like, "Oh, well, I just wanted to talk to you about the golf tournament," and then cut away. You didn't need to hear his golf talk speech.
And then when you cut back, he's still talking.
Yeah.
He's still mid-conversation.
Yeah, it's
What is pacing?
Never heard of it. Okay, so the Doctor and Jo walk into Trenchard back at the prison where he's what would you guess? He's playing golf. That's right, he's playing golf by himself and he's doing terrible. He's absolutely whiffing his shots. And
as he's playing his shot, as the ball's rolling across screen, it sounds like a laser is going off because of his music.
Yeah, the soundtrack's weird. But they start talking, and the Doctor's like, "Hey, the Master was out and he was escaped the prison." The guy's like, "What? No, he hasn't. Look on this TV. There he is reading a book still." And the Doctor's like, "Oh, okay. Well, in the last half an hour, he's escaped and come back." And the guy's like, "Oh, you're talking nonsense. But I tell you what, I'll go check the guards. Bye-bye. Haha." And he leaves. And at the start, I was like, please tell me the Doctor's not getting convinced by this absolutely terrible excuse. And thankfully he's not, where he says that Jo has to go back to unit and basically tell them to replace Trenchard and all of his men because they've been absolutely hypnotized by the Master.
And also Jo needs to be elsewhere because going to the Master is dangerous for a woman.
Yeah. And then we cut to the Master and Trenchard chatting, and Trenchard's like, "I don't think the Doctor believed me. I told him a terrible, terrible lie." And the Master is like, "It's okay. Tell the Doctor to come to me, and I'll just tell him my evil plan." And he'll be okay with it. And Trenchard's like, "Do you think it'll work?" And the Master's like, "Yes, it'll definitely work. 100%. This is a good plan." And Trenchard goes, "Well, okay, it's worth a try then. Okay." And he leaves, and we stay with the Master for an incredibly long time, where he slowly steps up onto a chair and he blocks the camera and he closes it and he shuts the door, he sits down, he opens his book again. It goes on for absolutely ages, where we're just because we're like, okay, they've got to have a sword fight, but we don't want to choreograph 5 straight minutes of a sword fight, so we're just gonna kill a bit of time here. So the Master calls a guard in, and then remember, this guard's brainwashed, isn't he? But he tricks the guard. He's like, "Look, that grill's blocked," and then he knocks him out when he could just ask the guard to give him his weapons.
And also the guard does the most over-the-top expression ever. He's like,
yeah, it's great. And then the Master's like, he starts to go for the guy's gun, and then he's like, no, a knife is a better weapon, and he takes the knife instead. Why would you not just take the gun? Doctor comes in, bang, do the Osgood, 12 straight shots to the head.
I think the original ending would have had the Master shoot at the Doctor instead of throw a knife at him. But that kind of leads into the problem of, why doesn't he just keep firing at the Doctor,
Well, do you one better. Don't give the guard a gun.
Yeah, but what if the master escapes?
They're brainwashed. I don't know. I feel like they wrote themselves into a corner with this.
Just a little bit.
So we cut to the Doctor, who's blindfolding himself, as he's also about to play golf. And he plays golf with the blindfold on, and of course he gets it into the glass, which it's quite a nice little payoff, I think, to Trenchard missing the golf shot.
But also the music again makes it sound like a laser, and also when the ball lands into the glass, it sounds like he's got a new high score in a video game.
yeah, the soundtrack doesn't fit really at all with the tone of this episode. But Trenchard comes in and he's like, "Oh, what happened to Joe?" And the Doctor's like, "Oh, I sent her away." And he's like, "Oh, well, you'll have to go and see the Master if you want then." And the Doctor's like, "Well, I just saw the Master. What are you talking about?" He's like, "When did you see the Master?" He's like, "You showed me him on the TV." And he's like, "Oh, yes, well, you might want to go see him in person for nothing evil at all. Ha ha ha." And the Doctor's clearly knowing that he's walking into a trap, goes, "Right, okay, I'll play along." And he goes off to go see the Master. Then Trenchard calls up some guards, I assume, like at the front gate or something, and he's like, "Joe's on her way. Don't let her leave. By the way, we must kidnap the girl, mohaha, because that's what she's here for." Then we get to the iconic scene from this episode, where the Doctor goes in to see the Master. The Master's like, "You've come to see me, Doctor." And the Doctor's like, "Yeah, you've been about the place, haven't you?" And the Master's like, "Yes, and I also have a gun." And the Doctor leaves the room really quickly. The Master comes out. Then the Doctor shouts like, "Akira?" He's a big fan of the anime movie Akira. As
Give me
he
a second.
kicks the gun out of the Master's hand.
Yeah, he's shouting Aikido, which is his karate moves, because obviously the third Doctor is an action man. He's a karate man.
Yeah, he kicks the gun out of the Master's hand. The soundtrack's going mental, and it doesn't fit the tone of the sword fight at all. And then the Master grabs a sword off the wall. The Doctor also suddenly has a sword, and they start swashbuckling. And it's a pretty fun wee sequence. I think the thing that holds it back for me is it's dated a bit. If it was a more modern sword fight, you'd have like swing, clish, 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 and like the sound effects of the sword, whereas we just have the raw audio from the actual fight, so it's just like metal clanking against itself, and it doesn't sound as good as when you add in the cinematic swings.
Yeah, the thing about this sequence is it's so short, and it's kind of disappointingly short, because this is the most iconic part of the episode for me. I think this is like the most memorable part. It was only shot in half an hour, which is insane. You don't usually it takes a couple of hours for a scene like this, but yeah, we had very limited time. It holds up pretty well overall.
There's some fun moments. There's the moment where the Doctor hides behind a curtain, runs round behind the Master, and the Master starts stabbing at the curtain, and the Doctor's like, "That's government property you're damaging there. I'd be careful." And then, of course, the moment where the Doctor stops fighting to eat a sandwich is the most random part.
So firstly, he gets knocked onto the table with the sandwich on it. The sandwich falls to the ground. I mean, all of a sudden he's eating a sandwich. So did he pick this sandwich up from the ground?
It's cut into quarters, so maybe there was just one part that didn't fall. But yeah, he just munches on a sandwich. Then they briefly have a fight again. The Doctor has a great pun about footwork, where the Master's like, "I've got you beat. You're very talented, Doctor, though." And the Doctor goes, "But you've not seen my footwork yet." And then he kicks the Master in the dick. But he beats him in the sword fight, and he turns to walk away for some reason. I don't understand why the Doctor would ever turn his back. With the what was he think? Yes, I've beat the Master in the sword fight. Now I can walk away without getting any information from the Master or preventing him.
He also gives him a little morality speech. Violence never solves anything.
Yeah, and then the Master's like, "Well, I'm going to throw a knife in your back." We get I thought it was quite a nice edit where the camera pans, but it pans into darkness, and then the credits appear. I thought it was a nice way to cut into the actual credits for this episode. But overall, what a pointless episode.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. Nothing I can say about episode 2 other than great sword fight. Just a great sword fight.
So the plot for episode 2, the Master goes to the army base for some boxes. Then he comes back, and then he gets in a sword fight.
When it ends.
We don't like. There's like nothing to do with the. There's like that opening sequence with the Sea Devils, and then we don't see them again at all throughout for this episode. Like they're like barely mentioned.
Yeah, that's the kind of the problem with bringing back the Master and introducing a new race. It's kind of front-loaded with Master, and you just kind of forget about the Sea Devils after a while.
Yeah, I don't think like have one or the other. I don't think the Master really does anything for the Sea Devils, or the Sea Devils do anything for the Master. Really.
Yeah, at least not yet. You'll see the Sea Devils working with the Master eventually.
Spoilers. We got to build to it. But yeah, this it's a mediocre episode. But what did you think about episodes 1 and 2 of the Sea Devils, Scott?
These two episodes together are pretty good. I think it's episode 2 is weaker, but episode 1 is a really solid introduction episode. I think it's very action packed, which is great for the John Pertwee era. John Pertwee really works well with action scenes. My one problem is it's basically the Silurians again. It's just repetition, only this time. The whole conflict between the Silurians and the humans, or the Sea Devils and the humans, are too one-dimensional. There's too many one-dimensional characters, whereas in the Silurians, I should say, there was more realistic characters with moral compasses. The Sea Devils themselves, we'll see later on, are one-dimensional. It's a shame. I think it's this thing that really brings down the Sea Devils as a story, but overall, the Sea Devils are just fun. These two first episodes are great.
Yeah, I think the first episode's great. I think the second episode has moments, but a little bit too much golf talk for me, personally. And, you know, when I eventually watch the Silurians, I'm just going to complain to you the whole time it's too much like the Sea Devils. And that the Silurians is just a poor imitation of the Sea Devil storyline.
The thing is with the Silurians, you've basically already seen it, because the Chris Chibnall episode when he brought them back in 2010
it's a good episode.
is basically the same episode.
Yeah, it was a good episode with Matt Smith though. I enjoyed that one when they brought them back. But it's nice visiting Pertwee again. We saw him with the Demons, where he was a really solid performance. I think it's another really solid performance with him as the Doctor. He's charming and funny and a bit campy with all his karate moves. It's good fun.
Roger Delgado's Master for me is just, he can never be beat in my opinion. He's perfect as the Master.
He is really, really good as the Master. I have soft spot. Well, like I love Missy and John Sim with all my heart so much. I think they're such good versions of the Master, and we've not seen enough of Sacha Dharan to really make any judgments on his. He's a bit manic, a bit too manic. For me, this new version of the Master, but he's still fine. But I really like Delgado as the Master, and I'm interested. Eventually we'll get to some other versions of the Master, but so far the only classic Master I've seen is Delgado. So I'm curious as to what the other ones are like, because I know a couple of them visually, and one of them looks exactly like Delgado. Like he regenerates into a man that looks exactly like him.
As Anthony Ainsley, he's a good Master, but I think he's a bit too camp. He's not as villainous as Delgado is. I think Delgado gives the perfect performance, honestly.
It was just such a strange choice to make him look exactly like Delgado. It was so weird. But anyway, thank you very much for listening to this episode of Who Watches Who. Next week, we will be back with episodes 3 and 4 of the Sea Devils as we dive further in to the golfy mists.
You said dive.
I also said golf. So look forward to that. Maybe when's this coming out? March. I don't expect the Jodie special to come out in March. I think in April is when it's going to come out. So hopefully we don't have to interrupt this special to quickly go, oh my god, the Jodie episode's out. So we will be covering that when that happens. But episodes 3 and 4 next week. Look forward to that, as I already said. This has been Who Watches Who, a Doctor Who podcast. You can find us on YouTube at Who Watches Who, on Facebook at Who Watches Who. I'm forgetting the own plugs. At Twitter, at Watches Doctor. This podcast is available in audio form wherever you get podcasts, and you can follow me on Twitter at Cloth223 if you want the occasional tweet about a movie I've watched. And Scott, you've got things that you talk about now.
Yes, you can email us at whowatcheswhopod@gmail.com. And what do you think of the Sea Devils? What do you think of golf? Would you play a game of golf with Trenchard?
Do we have to replace you from the tournament, because we know that you're getting really busy with all the like work stuff that's going on, but also like maybe you'll be free this weekend for the tournament. I don't know. I just wanted to get ask you now, so that if I do have to replace you, it's not going to be a problem. And maybe I should just go and ask the other guy if he wants to play golf in your stead, and we'll just play golf another time if that works for you. Is that going to be okay if we replace you for? You're not going to get too upset if
But yeah, email us about anything. We'd really appreciate an email. We haven't had one yet, have we?
Well, we had one
from
you,
yes.
and we had the spam email.
But yeah, send us an email. We'll be happy to read them on air in our news episodes at the end of the month.
Yeah, it'll be a good time. But until then, we will see you next week.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.